Coming up on The World Today. Countries around the world welcome 2021 with fireworks and scaled-down celebrations. New era for the UK as the country completes separation from the European Union. Plus, the Pope calls for peace in his New Year message. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Akaite Afia. Nigerians woke up to a new year 2021 with a message of gratitude from the president. In his New Year's message, President Muhammadu Buhari thanked God for seeing the country through the year 2020 with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. He also appealed to Nigerians to adhere to safety protocols to stop the spread of the virus.
My fellow countrymen and women,
as the year 2021 begins, the number of deaths from COVID-19 in 2020 stands at 1,289. The president's New Year's speech begins with a prayer for the souls of those who died in 2020, especially as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We must also acknowledge the passing away of our brothers and sisters who didn't make it into this new year. May their souls rest in perfect peace.
In 2020, Nigeria turned 60, a milestone which the president reminds Nigerians has confounded the nation's critics who did not think the country would last this long. He speaks on the NSARS protests, calling them understandable.
2020 indeed came with a lot of challenges ranging from security and economic issues across the regions to understandable protests that were mainly led by youth and served notice to the demand for police reforms and accountability.
Security, the economy, and anti-corruption have been the pillars of the Buhari administration since inception. The president has been accused of delivering poorly in these areas. He pledges to do better.
We recognize that we rapidly have to move to a more proactive and preemptive posture to ensure that these sorts of traumatic incidents do not become a norm. The anti-corruption drive of our administration, we have recorded substantial gains so far and this year. We are committed to continuing along the path of eradicating corruption through collaboration with all the arms of government to effectively prosecute this fight.
President Muhammadu Buhari ends his speech with a request, asking Nigerians to obey the COVID-19 protocols while his administration works on getting a vaccine, while pledging to play his part in moving the country forward. He's also asking for cooperation from citizens to promote the Nigerian spirit of oneness, togetherness, and unity. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Millions around the world have also bid farewell to 2020. But because of the coronavirus pandemic, there weren't many of the mass celebrations we're used to seeing. Many cities canceled their fireworks, shows, and banned large gatherings. Let's take a look at how the world celebrated the new year.
In the United States, only a handful of invited guests, including healthcare workers and others from the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic, gathered in New York's Times Square on New Year's Eve to witness the dropping of the New Year's Eve ball, marking the end of a sobering 2020 and a hopeful start to 2021. The guests, spaced apart for safety, gathered in front of a temporary stage set up in the plaza and watched live performances by the Bronx-born singer Jennifer Lopez and Gloria Gaynor, who performed her disco classic, I Will Survive, among others. In the United Kingdom, Big Ben marked the start of 2021, but COVID restrictions meant the traditional fireworks display from the London Eye was cancelled to help ensure social distancing measures are adhered to during the lockdown. Amid coronavirus restrictions, France's famous Champs-Élysées Avenue welcomed in the new year with an eerie silence as the clock struck midnight. In the German capital, fireworks were banned in most public squares, but that didn't stop people letting them off in the streets, in backyards, and even from their balconies, leading to a slew of domestic fires across the capital. In Moscow, residents near Red Square saw a huge firework display lit up the St. Basil's Cathedral and the Kremlin as Russian authorities prohibited crowds from gathering. And in China, celebrations were scaled down in cities across the country. But in Wuhan, where the pandemic is thought to have originated, thousands of people gathered in the city center to celebrate as balloons were released into the air. Crowds filled the main square in the North Korean capital Pyongyang to watch a concert and fireworks show marking the new year. Performers, none of them wearing protective masks, sang and danced on a stage decorated with a large, colorful 2021 sign. In the capital of Taiwan, 2021 was welcomed with a spectacular fireworks display from the city's tallest skyscraper, the 101 Tower, formerly Taipei's World Financial Center. But the crowd wasn't as big as usual, with reduced numbers due to the coronavirus restrictions.
2, 1, Happy New Year!
Thailand ushered in the new year with a display of fireworks and a light show, a toned-down celebration after the country was hit with its worst coronavirus wave yet. The sound and light show lasted just 5 minutes. In the Middle East, fireworks illuminated the sky around the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, as the clock struck midnight in Dubai. In Egypt, dozens of spectators lined the banks of Cairo's Nile River to watch a fireworks display that began at the stroke of midnight, ushering in the new year. Unlike most of the world, Vietnam's capital was one of the very few cities where a large crowd was allowed to gather for New Year's Eve celebrations as the world battles COVID-19. It was a similar case in New Zealand, where the spread of the virus has successfully been held in check. Festivities were a more or less normal affair as crowds gathered to watch firework displays in cities across the country.
A new era has begun for the United Kingdom after it completed its formal separation from the European Union. As the clock struck 11 p.m. on Thursday, December 31st in London, the UK exited the bloc's single market and customs union as the Brexit transition period came to an end. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the UK has the freedom and ability to do things differently and better now that the long Brexit process was over.
11 p.m. in London, midnight in Brussels. Britain's most famous bell rings out on New Year's Eve to mark the end of the Brexit transition period when the UK leaves the EU's single market and customs union. Celebrations were rather muted due to ongoing restrictions on gatherings, not to mention the divides in opinion over Britain's course. Some Britons, opposed to Brexit, chanted the Scottish farewell song and held a candlelit vigil outside the British Embassy in Brussels.
It's a very sad day for all of us, another very sad day for all of us after the official Brexit date earlier this year. And we decided to come here this evening to share our sorrow and to mourn and to light a candle to say goodbye to the UK.
We're mourning what we've lost. We're mourning just what we've thrown away, the right to free movement, the right to things like Erasmus, the ease of movement of goods, the British financial services industry being able to operate anywhere in the UK, or EU rather. It's just, I have no words for what we're throwing away.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson used his New Year's message to hail a new dawn for the UK.
We have our freedom in our hands, and it is up to us to make the most of it. And I think it will be the overwhelming instinct of the people of this country to come together as one united kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, working together to express our values around the world, leading both the G7 and the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. An open, generous, outward-looking internationalist and free-trading global Britain that campaigns for 12 years of quality education for every girl in the world.
But in Scotland, where support for independence has risen, partly due to Brexit, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon tweeted that they would be back soon and asked Europe to keep the light on. Ireland's Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, says it's not something to celebrate and the UK's relationship with Ireland will be different from now on.
Our London correspondent, Juliana Olayinka, joins us now for more. Juliana, thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. So it's day one of Brexit. Has it really set in for Britons? How are they reacting to the news that they are no longer part of the European Union?
Well, it's really difficult to try and gauge the mood in the room. I don't think Britons are as emotional as those commentators you had there in Brussels. But it depends. You know, I suppose there are some that will see this day as finally breaking free for Britain to become a sovereign nation again. And for others, this day is of pure heartache. It's really interesting that you shared that tweet there by Nicola Sturgeon, because according to sources, you know, the movement for Scottish independence is at its highest since it's been since the last referendum. I think when Boris Johnson 12 months ago won his overwhelming majority on that slogan of getting Brexit done, Remainers, all 17 million of them, were told to, quite frankly, shut up. And they kind of have muted some of their reactions, but I think that's just because of the COVID pandemic. But in all honesty, I've got to say, especially for our viewers in the UK, Brexit has been the cause of many arguments, many debates, family fallouts, political feuds, broken friendships over the past 4.5 years. And I definitely think the 11 o'clock dong yesterday will hopefully draw a line under that at least.
Of course. Well, what happens now that the deal's been reached? What's changed?
Well, a few things have changed, but Brexit, unfortunately, is far from over. There are missing gaps. There are still so many ties between the two. You can't have a marriage of almost 50 years and expect it to be completed overnight. That certainly isn't the case. I think one of the main gaps is what happens with the financial services. Considering this Conservative government are pro-business, there was shock and awe that Boris Johnson didn't make that a priority, considering the financial dominance that the City of London has. So negotiations for financial services will continue on to the new year. I think for most ordinary Brits like me and people I know, really it's, you know, how are you going to be travelling to Europe? That kind of remains the same. You don't necessarily have to get a visa at the moment. You can travel pretty freely across the bloc up to 90 days. If you want to be there for any more than 90 days, you would have to get a visa. Health insurance changes. It's those day-to-day practices and procedures that over the years Brits have been taken for granted that they no longer can't. And there are going to be so much more paperwork. But I think the main bone of contention is going to be the ports. It is going to be the movement of goods and those customs procedures that are likely to call hours upon hours of queues at the borders.
Right. Well, Juliana, thank you so much for joining us and giving us more clarity on the situation there.
Thank you.
Still to come on the program. New year, new national anthem. Australia changes its national anthem wording to reflect Indigenous history. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Pope Francis has ushered in the new year with an appeal for world peace amid a challenging 2020. It's the first time he has been seen publicly since he had canceled other New Year services due to his sciatica. Instead of giving his address to thousands of worshipers from a window overlooking St. Peter's due to coronavirus measures, he spoke from a lectern in the library of the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. He says the painful events that marked humanity's journey last year, especially the pandemic, taught the world how much it is necessary to take an interest in the problems of others and to share their concerns. Pope Francis highlighted in particular his worries about Yemen, which has been blighted by 6 years of violence that has pitted a Saudi-led coalition against the Iran-aligned Houthis movement. U.S. President Donald Trump has praised his administration's accomplishments, which he says includes its handling of the coronavirus pandemic and rebuilding the economy. He made this statement while giving a New Year's speech that was posted on Twitter. Mr. Trump, who had COVID-19 in October, frequently played down the severity of the pandemic and oversaw a response many health experts have criticized as disorganized, cavalier, and sometimes ignored the science behind the virus transmission. But the president says the United States has produced a COVID-19 vaccine in record time, and he had correctly predicted this would come before the year end.
Americans showed incredible grit, strength, tenacity, and resolve, and together we achieved truly historic victories like nobody ever thought possible. To defeat the China virus, we launched the largest mobilization since World War II. We transformed our factories to build tens of thousands of ventilators and millions of masks virtually overnight. Nobody thought it could be done. We ignored the experts who demanded open borders, and we shut down travel from China and Europe to protect our citizens, and we built the wall. We pioneered groundbreaking new therapies and treatments, and we saved millions of American lives. Over and over again, we were told it would be impossible to deliver a vaccine by the end of the year. All of the experts said, absolutely unthinkable. Trump is exaggerating. It can't happen. And we did it long before the end of the year.
Well, on the 20th of January, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden will take the oath of office after winning the November 3rd presidential elections. Mr. Biden has pledged to make the coronavirus pandemic his top priority and to sign a flurry of executive actions on his first day in office to deliver on campaign promises, including rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, a landmark international deal to combat climate change that President Donald Trump exited in 2017, and rejoining the World Health Organization, which Trump moved to withdraw from this year. We have joining us now on the program foreign policy analyst Joanna Leblanc to discuss more on this. Joanna, Happy New Year and welcome to the program.
Happy New Year to you as well, and I wish everybody a prosperous 2021 at Channels Television.
Oh, well, thank you. So, Joanna, President-elect Joe Biden has said repeatedly that his first priority will be to try to bring the COVID-19 pandemic to an end. I mean, this is a mountainous task. More than 344,000 people have died in the country, with over 19 million confirmed cases. How much impact do you think he can make within the first few months?
Certainly, I think that COVID-19 vaccination should be at the forefront of the Biden's administration. I think ultimately the American people will get the vaccine. But my greatest concern is that low-income countries' access to the vaccine due to global inequality. We know that according to the CDC, African countries are not expected to be even a part of this conversation until mid-2021. So I am gravely concerned. I think that rich countries should too be concerned, because we saw how one infected person, Wuhan, China, brought our global economies to their knees, and also contributed to the death of millions of people. So I think that it is in the national security interest of rich nations to ensure that countries across the African continent and other developed nations have access to the vaccination, just like rich countries will and do.
Well, Joe Biden's first cabinet as U.S. president is being described as potentially the most diverse ever. The latest member announced was Nigerian-American Osaramen Okolo as an advisor on COVID-19. So what do you make of Mr. Biden's cabinet? Does this new team better reflect America, and what impact will this have on the country and the African-American community?
Sure. What I can say is that Biden's cabinet is a reflection of Biden's idea that experience matters. And I think that dealing with all of the challenges that America is now facing, you need folks who are experienced to be in leadership roles. While I think that the appointment of the Nigerian-born gentleman is incredible, and the Biden administration has also appointed a number of African Americans and Black immigrants to his cabinet, but I'm concerned that those folks would just be token, right? Because there are countless other positions that have yet to be filled, and we know that historically, when it comes to the federal government, Black people, when you look at Black people, their role in senior positions, it's not that much. We're looking at 22% in comparison to their white counterparts, and the issue is not that there's a lack of Black, educated, and accomplished and experienced candidates. It's just that the administration and previous administrations have just not done a great job ensuring that there's complete diversity, and not just a few individuals, but all across the board. So it is my hope that the administration will continue to recruit diverse and talented candidates because they are easy to find, especially right here in the nation's capital, where Black women are some of the most educated people in America.
Right. Well, Joanna, we'll be keeping an eye on the situation there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
And finally on the program, Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the government has amended its national anthem to remove reference to the country being, quote, young and free, amid calls to recognize that its Indigenous people are the oldest continued civilization in the world, changing it to, quote, for we are one and free. Australia has struggled for decades to reconcile with Aborigines who arrived on the continent some 50,000 years before British colonists. Each year, Australians have a national holiday on January 26, marking the first date the first fleet sailed into Sydney Harbour in 1788, carrying mainly convicts and troops from Britain. Some Indigenous people refer to Australia Day as Invasion Day.
It's a change for all Australians, and I've already been encouraged by the strong response from Australians right across the country, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, people of all different backgrounds, people of all different political views. And I think this very much sits in the mainstream of where Australia would like us to go, and I think it's a great way to start the new year. This is a simple change, I think. It's a change that I think is very much in accord with where Australians feel about these things. It's not pretending to be anything more than it is. I think it's been well received across the country. There will be those who don't think it goes far enough, and those who think it goes too far. Well, that's democracy, and that's one of the things we celebrate in our national anthem. But I think it's a sensible change, and I think it'll be well received, and I look forward to it being sung the first time. Perhaps that will be at the SCG test in a few days' time.
Well, thanks so much for joining us for this half hour. I'm Akaite Afia. Happy New Year and stay safe.